Friend, I'd like to call here Mr. Francesco Pugliese, who is the chairman of ADM and the CEO of CONAD, Nino Andena, who is a milk producer and part of the Santangiolina cooperative, Alberto Bizzotto, CEO, Centrale del Latte, Vicenza, Roberto Brazzale, who is a lawyer and who is president of Brazzale, Aldo Cavagnolo, who is director of Latteria Soresina, Fabio, Leonardi, IGOR, and Nisio Paganin, Agriform. Okay, you have the license to, shoot on Mr. Pugliese, and you will receive a copy of the book that was written by him, and I would like to ask you to make an applause to the members of the round table, because organizing the forum and organizing the logistics is very complex. So I'd like to ask you to really thank the members of the round table, but also thank the organizers of this. I'd like to thank Mr. Pugliese for being here. A question: what did you bring back home after this forum? Now, first of all, something I heard in the morning. Now, among the top 20 dairy producers in Europe, we don't have an Italian company. Secondly, when it comes to investments above 20 million euros to modernize plants and to develop the industry, there is only one investment in Italy. I don't know which company made that investment. And the investment was made in a very special sector, which is not an investment made in the production of a finished product. So the messages I bring home is that, well, Italy is not really faring very well. At the same time, I see the very nice Indian cooperative. I saw really a very nice advertising campaign, much better than the ones that we see here in Italy, with the very nice lady who is looking forward, but as a matter of fact, she's looking at her product. So looking at production to the house of the consumer, from the cow to the child who's drinking milk. There I see the future, whereas here I see tradition and I see the past. So for you, the future is black here? No, not really. Very grey, let me say. No. I don't see any color. I don't see the future. That's the truth. I wanted to say something about investments made by companies. Those were investments in a period of 3 years. Probably we Italians are not capable to show what kind of investments we make in our companies. My company invested 24 million euros. And this is a problem. We're not visible. Well, this is another feature that Italians have. Whenever somebody criticizes us, we tend to react badly. I mean, okay, I take what you say for good. It doesn't solve the problem. I mean, had we had 2 Italian investments in Italy instead of 1, well, I think the issue is another. It's not this. The issue is the size as well, because I think the Italian companies do their investments, but the problem is the size of the enterprises that we have here in Italy. Well, that's a problem.
Però eravate voi contro di me, no?
I mean, that was supposed to be you shooting at me, not me shooting at you. Well, the invitation was that of, kind of attacking him. You should be the bad ones. Now, Mr. Pugliese, I represent the Centrale del Latte Vicenza. We're part of the Centrale del Latte Turin, 100 million euros revenues, a company which is very much rooted in its territory, fresh milk, UHT milk, yogurt, and at the moment this is something which is meaningful because we collect milk locally, we use the local skills, and we offer the milk in the same region. And because the consumers are buying our product, what am I doing here? Well, because everyday consumers buy my product, with the exception of CONAD stores. I don't know what kind of policy CONADs run. So, and this perhaps was my question. Now, the fact that we never find Italian companies on the slide where we speak about the world, so if you consider the quality of the product and if you consider competitiveness, I'm not asking for subsidies, I'm not asking to be supported, I only ask for the consumer to be able to choose, and I think this is a right. Well, there are many of you who are not sold within CONAD's store. Well, I am used to answer, as I think, and I perhaps should be somewhat more diplomatic because, always saying people what you think is not always nice. Now, let me give you a few figures about CONAD which go against what you said. First of all, there is no brand in Italy which values Italian character, which is above 50 million euros, but CONAD's. We have one brand of CONAD, which is called Sapori di Terra, which sells 500 million euros, a bit more. And then it makes 50 million euros in terms of exports. And we bring the Italian character abroad. Now, 95% of fruit and vegetables sold in our stores are Italian produce. I mean, 5% is accounted for by bananas and pineapples, which are not produced in Italy. That's the thing. When it comes also to developing and promoting the best of Italian production, we have our own private label, which has a market share of 27%. 90% of this is produced by SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises of Italy. We also have some foreign producers, and it contributes to promoting a high number of companies. When it comes to fresh milk, we are market leaders with our own private labels within our store. We produce high-quality milk. We buy milk in the areas in which we operate. You are unlucky because in Turin we have a very low market share, and we will not, come to an excellent producers to just buy 4 liters of milk a day. We buy it somewhere else. I think many people recognize this. There are only a few companies in Italy that enhances the value of the Italian tradition. Where is the president of the Parmigiano Reggiano Consortium? Now, the share of Parmigiano Reggiano, I'm referring to 30 months wheels. We have 3 times the market share that you will find. I mean, our market share is 3 times that of the United States in terms of Parmigiano Reggiano, 30 years aging. So I do apologize that if you're not our supplier, well, will not give up. I will not give up coming to you to offer you my product. Of course, you have a very important commercial policy. We know that CONAD invests a lot of money, and we've all seen the advertising campaigns that you run in television, and certainly you defend your own company, and you're right to do so. What I'm saying is that in this moment, I account for an important market share in my area, and that's it. I just wanted to understand what it means for you when you say local territory. Well, you know, we were not even present in Vicenza. I mean, we just bought 30 shops there. Ask your colleagues in other areas in Italy. Whenever you have a distributor, that's the problem. Instead of trying to build something, well, you get concerned, and you do that with a bias, because we finally bought 40 stores in the Veneto region because we were not present up until now, and then you get concerned to understand what is going to happen to that market. Ask to your colleagues. We keep enhancing the value of the local producers, and we don't do that, you know, just by chance. We don't do, you know, like, you know, you'll find somebody else who produces and enhances the value of chefs in Italy and the food in Italy through restaurants. Okay, go to him and sell your products to him, and you know who I'm talking about. You'll not sell many to them. Well, there's a high chance that you are making a very nicely made advertising campaign here. They asked me to ask you a bad question, but I might risk the supply of Grana Padano going forward, so I'll be very diplomatic. I don't read papers, so I just know my own experience. The statements that you made in the press by speaking about the minimum guarantee of the price of milk, does that not risk of you know, having industrial suppliers criticizing you? What was the price? 37? 37? 38. Now, if you provide private labels, you know very well what the starting price should be, and to do that, we negotiate with suppliers, starting from the farm gate price. Otherwise, everything else is, you know, useless talks. It was too easy for producers to get rid of responsibilities. That's what producers were saying, by saying that the price of the farmers were not correct because the retailing industry would not allow you neither to increase prices nor to do something else. And that was not true, because throughout the retailing industry, the year before, we had price increases, both for branded products like Lactalis and Granarolo, but also for private label products. When I said this, I just wanted to end, you know, this thing whereby responsibilities are constantly, you know, unloaded to the other parties, whereby the retailing industry keeps being criticized of, you know, starving whoever is downstream. Now, within that period, whenever we had a problem of that kind, people lined up, tractors lined up outside of the door of the retailing industry stores. I mean, we buy the product from you, and it is certified by Nomisma. The food supply chain is certified by Nomisma. Now, if you consider the value produced within the food supply chain in Italy, upstream and downstream, so distribution and farmers, more or less have the same earnings. Those who are in the middle have a productivity which is 3 times those who are upstream and downstream. And so I think it's about time to clarify things. So in that moment, the moment you are referring to, without mentioning names, although I could make family names, there were a couple of nice companies who were telling us that they were paying price of milk at 41 euro cents, farm gate price, and they were saying producers that they were to pay 32 because they were not being given a higher price from ours. So I think that if we want to solve the problems, we need some clarity here, because we're no longer kids, we're not playing games here. Let me explain you what kind of games we were playing when we were kids. There was a game whereby music starts, 8 couples, men and women, and 1 man who is extra with a brush. I mean, while listening to the music, the music is stopped, and therefore you have to go and get your broom. There's only 8 brooms. If you are left without the broom, you would have to pay drinks to the other. So we're no longer playing the broom games here. We're not, trying to, unload the buck onto somebody else's shoulder. Problems are to be solved in a more structured manner, because after all, the responsibilities in that field are to be shared. The supply chain does not work. We have costs within that supply chain, the milk supply chain. The costs are higher, dramatically higher than you will find in Europe. The situation is totally out of control, and the fact that we are so much fragmented and that we have high infrastructural costs implies overall higher costs. Italian consumers, however, don't understand this. They don't understand why, regardless of the packaging of the product, a liter of fresh milk in Germany, high-quality milk, within a retailing store will be sold 0.80 euro cents. In Italy, the same milk, high quality, with a private label, will be sold at 1.10 euros, whereas the big company's milk has a price ranging between 1.4 and 1.8 euros. I do understand that we have infrastructural costs which are highest, stable costs which are highest, but if you take everything into account, the 1-to-2 ratio in terms of prices, you cannot justify it. Who's earning? Who's gaining money? Well, I told you already. But Ambrosi and Zanetti said it's not like this. Perhaps let's give them a microphone. Now, let me make a comment. I am downstream and you are upstream. And I don't have bad questions to ask Mr. Pugliese, because among the few voices that we heard over the past few months to try and clarify things, well, it was exactly him, and I'd like to thank him for this. I'd like to make a few comments about what we heard in these 2 days. Let me speak as a farmer. I am a farmer, and so in this capacity I shall speak. The scenario we had this morning really kind of shocked me. I'm not a person who lives in the past and does not accept technology. Technology should be used. Everything should be used, but I produce milk, you process it. But in the products, you should put milk. If we want Italy to be known for excellent products, in those products, you need to use milk. And you should not only use technology, you should not only use powders and other ingredients, you should use milk, because if you don't do that, we shall lose the identity, the characteristics of certain products. And since we live in a globalized world, well, at that point, Italy will lose, including the farmers of Italy. So the only possibility that we have is to be able to maintain diversity, but making sure that this diversity is really perceived. If my cheese is better and much tastier than other cheese, it has to be like this. I mean, it's not sufficient to speak about this. So this is why I say that cheese should be made mainly with milk, perhaps adding something else, and not the contrary. Otherwise, we will not be able to keep up and to help the Italian system thrive. Now, as we heard, Italy is the third most well-known brand in the world. Why are we not using it? Why do we not exploit it all? If we manage to exploit it, perhaps to do that, we should also recognize the value of farmers, and perhaps farmers should adopt the role of making sure that you carry out your business in the proper manner. So when considering the income and when considering the business pie, I think that producers should have a share of that pie. I do realize the costs in Italy are different from the costs that you have in New Zealand. I do understand it, but also processed products have a price. Somebody says that we should index the Italian product to that of Germany. Okay, we can do that. However, then we should have all of the costs that they have in Germany. I mean, the thing is that, you want to sell made in Italy products with the costs that are usually found on the average market. And it can't be so. I mean, I think that the business, if we want to have something that protects workers, protects farmers, protects suppliers, well, then everybody should profit. I mean, farmers work because they want to live. So I think that we should put together investments, technology, and everything, but everything should take into account this. We certainly made big mistakes, and the consortia perhaps should question themselves and understand whether the model that has been so far used perhaps should be innovated. Now, perhaps we believe some innovation, and I think that we should ask ourselves these strategic questions. I mean, I am a producer, and I will not give up the idea of, merely importing milk from the north of Europe. I will not give up the idea of producing very tasty products, and since we produce products very well, we can produce them with good productivity. Since we have a very good business in processing products, why should we give up this toy? Why? Because of globalization, because of flattening out of tastes? No, I don't think this is what we want. Let me say something else, and then I conclude. We should not be afraid. Okay, prices of the raw material is very important if you want to have a good business. But I have many friends here in the room, and I know that they have always made money when they paid farmers a high price. So we should not be afraid because of this. What we need to take into account is that if we give up our farmers, our producers, well, we lose really the golden egg hen. I think Mr. Petrilli wants to say something. Now, Mr. Pugliese, good afternoon. My name is Petrilli, Lorenzo Petrilli. I'm not a producer, I'm not a distributor, I'm just a fan of this industry. You mentioned Germany. In Germany, the prices of packaged butter are publicly disclosed and they are quoted in a bulletin. Now, in certain months, it is not profitable for the retailing industry. In some other months, it is. So sometimes butter producer lose money, but the month after the retailing industry will pay a higher price to the producer. Now they know that they're losing money. So this means that they kind of help each other, the producers and the retailers. And this is what I was also told by some of my German friends. I don't know what CONAD does, but I don't think retailing companies in Italy kind of help producers. Well, you know, if retailing companies do not help producers would have gone bankrupt some time ago. We have to stop it. We need to stop approaching things in this way.
Con 250 addetti.
So we have only 112 food companies with 150 headcount. Conversely, in other European countries, there are many more. Average turnover, 5 and more million euro in Germany, 3 point something in France, 2 million in Italy. The number of companies with more than 50 employees, more than 3,000 in Germany, 2,063 in France, in Italy about 900. What do I mean with all these figures? I mean that for certain products, the price is changed. There is a contract with a commercial brand and not your own proprietary brand, because when you have your proprietary brand, due to a law that Federalimentare e Latte asked for, when you signed your annual contract, you have a list, and if you want to change that list, you have to make a new contract. And Federalimentare asked for this. And it actually includes your companies as associates. For commercial brands, things work in a different way. So the supplier becomes an integral part of our company with private labels, and we have a range of oscillations. So we decide this together with the producer. Well, that company in Germany, you know, does not follow the Mercuriali system. Well, that's how they work in Germany.
Nell'ambito della mia vita ho fatto 2/3 della.
Well, I have spent a long time of my life sitting on the other side where you're sitting now, and I was general manager for Barilla for Italy and Europe. So in Germany, they decide the price. It has a certain duration, and when the time is over, then renegotiate the price. So it may happen that since the price is prefixed for a certain period of time, there is a moment characterized by loss, but later on things are equalized. It is a stupid way. I'm sorry if there are any Germans in this room, but it is a stupid way because it doesn't take into due consideration the real changes in price of raw materials throughout the year. But rather the system tends to level everything, which is reassuring in time, because a 6-month or a yearly contract guarantees a fixed price. And if retailers have made a mistake in fixing too high a price in the following 6-month period, they decrease it and they recover their margin. This is just a way to sort out the problem. I don't like it, but that's a possibility. And it applies not only to butter, it applies to everything. Well, they're happy in Germany to work with butter in this way, but I don't think anybody is happy in Italy. You're talking about butter producers? Well, if you listen to what they say. Well, please be very, very concise, and let me stress this once again, concise. Right. I don't know what we are talking about here, because I'm sitting in front of you, and I don't understand whether we have to see how to enhance the Italian system with our agricultural products and farming products. Because after all, your questions that I've read in the beautiful book require an answer. And my answer is we lack raw materials and we have too much capacity. So this discrepancy in Italy is due to the fact that we have few raw materials, because apart from the Po Valley, we haven't got other areas. 60 million inhabitants, 150 million quintals of milk. New Zealand, 220 million quintals equivalent of milk and 4 million inhabitants. They have more cows than people. So in Italy, we haven't got the raw material, not even to feed our population. But we have fabulous quality in processing cheese. Everybody adores our cheese, including large groups that will never be able to produce such a good cheese like the one made by those small Italian family-run companies that produce only 10 wheels of cheese a day. And what do? We export on top of that. So we lack raw materials, we export, and we cannot but have a gap in terms of availability of raw materials. And this gap cannot but be filled with imports of raw materials from abroad. But we have an ideological attitude. We view this as the enemy. I mean, as long as we think in this way, analyzing the extraordinary skills of transformers, of processes, to defend the yield of real estate, the yield of the fields, focusing only on the territory as the only matrix for product quality, we cannot but regress, because it can't produce more raw material than what we produce right now. We cannot increase our production of raw materials. I mean, forget about the lira, euro, D-mark exchange rate. This is actually the true reason for the problems linked to our agricultural produce. But let's forget about this. I mean, when we talk about Italian excellence, I mean, do you believe that this is just linked to the raw material you produce on the Italian ground? Why shouldn't we be proud of the extraordinary capabilities of those people who do not have fields but have amazing qualities? I mean, Italian coffee is produced with raw material coming from Brazil or other countries. Other products where the raw materials cannot be produced in Italy are excellent, even if the raw materials come from other countries, and those are shown as example of Italian excellence. Why not with milk? We have extraordinary milk in Cremona, but milk from Moldavia is not worse. I don't mean to say it is better, but in some cases it might even be better. So if Sapori e Dintorni defends the Italian excellence and only has BDOs, this means that Italy is only identified as the territory and not as the people. And you limit your own possibilities of enlarging our companies, using raw materials coming from other countries, or developing, because development won't be possible unless we are free to process raw materials coming from abroad, because we cannot focus on the yield of estates only, on the yield of the ground. Well, there is an ideological bias, is that right? No, there is no ideological bias, but let me react to what we've heard, because some points were not precise. Number one, in Italy, we only have independent chains in agricultural products, wine, chicken and eggs. No other made-in-Italy product is completely autonomous in Italy throughout the whole value chain. But made-in-Italy products known worldwide are not chicken and eggs. Fruit, well, we're no longer the leaders, because Spain is growing more with citrus than Italy is. It is not true that we're large exporters, because it's ridiculous what we export compared to our potential. And as far as exports are concerned, the Netherlands that have no territorial products equivalent to what Italy has, well, they export 81 billion worth of versus 33 in Italy. Germany, which is well known all over the world for technology and cars, but they are known worldwide to have food. So food is not the excellence in Germany. Well, they export 67 billion worth of food products versus 33 in Italy. Belgium, which is such a small country, the equivalent in terms of population and territory to one of the Italian regions, export 34 billion worth of. So our target, 50 billion exports, which has now become the slogan of those who want to beat the dog around the bush. They're telling us that more than 2,000 years ago, somebody died on the cross because of a cold. That's the same type of story they're trying to tell us. So as long as this country does not see things as they are, trying to understand why we have this situation, because Italians' skills in all fields. I mean, think about the best textiles, the best weavers in Italy. You know where they were? They were in the Calabria region in the south of Italy. So the best weavers had a tradition there. They used to weave different types of yarns in different ways. They had their weaving frames at home. So men used to work in the fields and women used to remain at home weaving textiles. And in the meantime, they used to sing songs for the children that actually summarized how they had to weave the different type of yarns. Recently, those songs have been rediscovered, and thanks to these songs, it is now possible to produce amazing textiles that are now used by Armani and other fashion brands, because we have spectacular yarns again and spectacular textiles. But you know, yarn comes from abroad, and silk. Italians have been famous for their silks, but silk used to come from the East. So we have amazing skills. We are skilled in our know-how, be it cheese, but I was lucky enough to pay a visit to Latteria in Laval, and I met the owner of Latteria. And I told him the following: if you organize meetings with others, with journalists specifically, and maybe with all of you, everybody would realize that we cannot but be happy that it ended as it ended. I mean, they got a museum about milk culture worldwide. I've worked for approximately 2 years in a milk company. You remember that. And, you know, I had some knowledge in the field, but believe me, I have seen something amazing. I have tasted spectacular cheeses. You know which is the leader cheese in the Puglia region? And you know why Coop had a flop for such a long time there? Because the cheese is called Rodet. They produce it. They don't even produce it in France. But in Puglia, people believe that Rodet comes from Puglia. I believe they're the only region eating this type of cheese. But anyway, back to what we were talking about. Either do we understand what we should do to get together and really develop this country, or we are just talking and that's it. Where's IGOR? IGOR has a wonderful product, but it is not sold on the mass market, because what is sold on the mass market is something different from what you had today for lunch. Is that right? So we want the one we had today. We don't want the one that is sold on the mass market. So we don't buy those products. But apart from the joke, I mean, if Walmart, but this is too easy an example. I mean, there's no company here that can provide 1/10 of what Walmart does. Let's take Deka with all its cooperatives, market leader in Germany, 50 billion turnover in Germany alone. I mean, let's say they come here and visit one of your companies to sell one of your products. None of you is able to deliver the product, neither in terms of quantity nor in terms of consistent service in time. I'm sorry, we've been producing a Deka product for 3 months, just to your knowledge. You do the Deka product, you've been doing this for 3 months, but you know how many suppliers there are? Because, of course, there are some products that are branded, and, of course, we do not have one single deliverer. It would be stupid, one single supplier. But, of course, we invest, we plan. I mean, you are drawing a picture of the Italian enterprises that is different from reality. I mean, you have spoken of low level of investments, size issue. Then we have heard about the problem of the promotion strategy of consortium. I mean, I also represent the Gorgonzola consortium, and I can talk for the whole chain value for Gorgonzola. But the critical point is that in Italy, we're not supported by a system. I mean, all Gorgonzola producers have invested and renewed their factories. And I would like to congratulate them all, friends, colleagues, and competitors. IGOR has planned 35 million of investments for the next 3 years. You're talking about export. You have also talked about the size of companies. But we're lucky in Italy to still have families that believe in what they do, and notwithstanding the difficulties characterized by the fact that our Italian Foreign Trade Commission and our Italian system have had no funds to promote made in Italy products. And we do not have the advantages that other countries have. That is, there is no Italian distribution chain with an international dimension. You have mentioned the Germans and the French. Well, Germany has got Metro that vehicles German products to Russia, China, and Europe. ID and Lidl are present in Australia, in the United States, so that French and German producers have easier access to other countries for their products. And then the whole country system, I mean, I'm happy that they're now trying to promote made-in-Italy products and investing resources. But until 6 months ago, all entrepreneurs, Ambrosi, Attilio, Antonio, Fausto Turcato, the ones whom I meet at the fairs, the Brazzale family, I mean, we travel worldwide, investing our own money, trying to find customers without a system to support us, without national system. The others have got such a structure. We are completely alone. So from an entrepreneurial viewpoint, I believe we have a top-level class of entrepreneurs. Don't forget that we pay 20% more for milk compared to the European average. Our tax rate for companies is the highest in Europe. We have a contribution system which is the highest in Europe. We pay more for raw materials and energy. Until 6 months ago, they were the most expensive in Europe. What about volumes? I mean, we export products with an average value per kilogram above 6.5. All products that are imported are below 4 euros. We've seen that Frontera people are so good to export to China. We've seen the histogram of quantities, huge quantities, but these are commodities. It's a different thing. With our products, PDO products, we have to create a culture, which is a culture of our country to sell our PDOs. Thanks God, we still have consortia that have, albeit limited, some budget. Talking about Gorgonzola, Montasio, Asiago, Taleggio, I mean, our funds are so scanty that we have some difficulties in organizing our ordinary activities and organizing a little bit of surveillance. I mean, I went to Seoul Food in Korea last week and I found Gorgonzola made in the United States. It was on every possible shelf. And then I realized that in the free trade agreement between Europe and South Korea, Korea had committed itself to respect European PDOs. And I'm calling all our politicians to react to this. There is such an imitation of our products which is non-acceptable. The free trade agreement with Canada that has just been signed, and we have had 150 quotas for exports available, but there is a second level, and now the Canadian can produce Gorgonzola and name it Gorgonzola. I mean, do you believe that entrepreneurs have some hope? Of course not. We just go on like we've always done in the past. We invest our own money. We risk on our companies and our families, and nobody is supporting us.
Leggerà nel libro, guardi che quando leggerà il libro sono totalmente d'accordo. Quando leggerà...
Well, I totally share with what you say. In my books, you'll find exactly the same things that you said. So I agree. Let me tell you something about the retailing industry, however. At the end of the 80s, when we had the beginning of internationalization of the retailing industry, because it all started off at that moment, in France, the President of the Republic said something that really was impressive. But not only that, he provided incentives. And he said in the program that the retailing industry will become the driver, the carrier of food products of France in the world. Well, back then we had Auchan and Carrefour. We still have those companies. They were owned by two families. They were not cooperatives. Leclerc, Marché, these cooperatives were very little. I mean, they really were very, very little. So at that point, France started with the internationalization of its industry, basically. Now, in Italy back then, what kind of retailing industry do we have? Now, we had GS that was owned by the state, by IRI. And then we had Città Mercato owned by the Agnelli family. Then Standa was owned by the Berlusconi family. So that was the retailing industry back then. I mean, back then, CONAD or Coop, which in the meantime have become the market leaders in Italy, back then we were putting together small businesses to cover the Italian market. Whereas, I mean, the big retailing industry, I mean, you know, GS, Standa, we're speaking Agnelli, we're speaking Berlusconi, but they were considering the retailing industry as a nice cash flow machine to make other investments in the world of finance. And then GS was sold by the state, and it was purchased partly by the Agnelli family and by the Benetton group. Benetton at least focused on one of the business units. Not only GS belonged to the state, they also had Autogrill. So Benetton focused on Autogrill and has become among the world leaders in its industry. So what you say today is very difficult to implement. Metro is not a vehicle for the promotion of German products. The business model that they have, and they serve restaurants throughout the world with cash and carry model, basically if you go in a cash and carry of metro in Italy, you do not find a huge number of French products. You'll find a huge number of French products within Carrefour, because with metro, they are targeting restaurants. So not the consumers. Okay, maybe I was too extreme because I wanted to raise a point. No, I understand what you said. Now, in this moment, it's easy to, constantly play the broom game, saying, who do I have to live without the broom? So I think that we should start doing, each and every one of us, our own things. I mean, we should take upon ourselves our own responsibility. I think that we should join forces, certainly, but let me tell you something. Is it normal? And incidentally, there are a lot of nice companies that work well. The other day, I was having dinner with Mr. Auricchio. I thought he was not here, but he's here. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. And they did something very nice. And they showed that it is possible to put different companies together, because, to enlarge the number of products. When it comes to exporting Italian products, you can't just export Parmesan cheese or provolone cheese. Now, we are part of a European cooperative with 3 other partners. We are the reference partner for Italian products. We are going to increase the number of partners, so we will become very, very important. But, we work in a different manner, and then we look for more than one suppliers. We look for quality. Now, in order to promote Italy, it's not only important to sell private labels, but branded labels, make sure they are sold abroad. Now, Parmesan cheese is not a competitor of Gorgonzola and Auricchio cheese. But if I go to South America, they don't ask only for Parmesan cheese. They ask for Gorgonzola cheese, Auricchio cheese, Grana Padano, and Parmigiano Reggiano. We should join forces, and perhaps we should put together our commercial organization, share it among yourselves, because in this manner you will be able to go on foreign markets, and you will be able to sell, yes, the Made in Italy. It's true that the Made in Italy, after Visa and Coca-Cola, is the 3rd ranking brand in the world, after Visa and Coca-Cola. Basically, this is what you are telling. It's only us, entrepreneurs, cooperatives. We do not have a country supporting us, as you will see in other countries. Now, 2 days ago, a new brand was changed. Now, the apple with the color of the Italian flag, and then it was changed. It was vertical, then horizontal. To me, it's okay if you want to identify the Made in Italy. I think that the Italian government, since we cannot preserve anything when it comes to our products, I think that the government should do something which it can be easily done, which is beyond any commercial agreements that we can find. We should use the Italian flag. We should activate processes. We should activate legal processes against those who misuse the Italian flag throughout the world. That's the Made in Italy. That's the Italian flag. So this is something that we should do. The relationship between the Italian products that we sell and the counterfeit products is 1 to 2. Now, Italian sounding is sold more than Italian products with a ratio of 2 to 1. I mean, what are we talking about? An American company that produces Italian-sounding Parmesan cheese, what do we have to do? Agreements to block that company from producing that cheese? Well, it's like, saying that 2,000 years ago, that guy on the cross died because of a cold, which we all know it's not true. So the only thing that we can safeguard is the Italian flag. Because this is what can help us stand out. If you want to sell Italian products, and if you want to safeguard the Italian character, well, you have to go against those people who produce counterfeits, but you know very well that if you want to sell that counterfeit, they are forced to use the Italian flags of their products. And so I think that we should take legal measures against these guys, and this is something the Italian government should do. I'd like to go back to what you were saying at the beginning when it comes to margins. I think it was you who said that margins in the food industry is around 3%. Part goes to the milk producer, part goes to the producer, and part goes to the retailing industry. But why? When the retailing industry makes advertising, speaks only of low prices, only, with the exception perhaps of CONAD, which speaks also of something else. If you look at the advertising of the retailing companies, they say, come to me to buy because I have a 30% discount on my products, but they never mention quality. How's that? Well, I'm here in my capacity as, the CEO of CONAD. And I don't want to feel shared responsibility of others. Now, let me tell you that the offering of our products aims upward. We have a product range of products that really is very different. We do not sell not even a gram of Parmesan, which is below 24 months. You will not find a store of CONAD with Parmesan cheese on the shelves that is not above 24 years. And we have a few stores that sell 30 years Parmesan cheese. Now, our offering always goes in that direction. And the same applies to the advertising campaigns that we do in advertising for fresh products, fruit and vegetables, and dairy products. We always take high-quality products. Of course, when we are doing promotion, we tend to stress that our prices are convenient, but believe me that we managed to have people understand why a product should be more expensive or should cost more. Within our stores, within our outlets, we always have an entrepreneur. We are a cooperative. We cannot do, compensations like somebody else does from one store to the next. We can't say, okay, I come to Modena, I want to, compete with that player onto the market. I am willing to lose money there because I earn money somewhere else. No, we can't do that because our stores are owned by individual entrepreneurs. This is why we set our strategy on quality and perhaps higher prices, and also because we are very careful in selecting the products we sell in our stores. Nisio Paganin now. Now, in the morning, we talked about price volatility, which I'm sure that will give you a few problems in terms of planning. And this volatility is also the result of market speculation. I'm not an expert in the economy, but perhaps a better transparency of supply and demand data could help us perhaps to smooth out this effect. My question is the following. Recently, even within the consortium I am part of, You know, I keep saying that we don't have data. Now, 2014, Nielsen said Grana Padano minus 1.9, whereas we have other data telling us plus 1.8%. So the difference here is between living and dying. What do you think? What is your question? If we had a more transparent market, more information about consumption, perhaps we will be able to avoid price volatility. Research institutes give us data that are really questionable. Perhaps let me add something. Could you give us a sales trend of Grana Padano, Parmigiano Reggiano, and similar cheese to understand where the market's going? Yes, we have the data. I'm not going to give you the data now because I don't know them off my mind now. We sell thousands and thousands of products. How can I possibly remember the data of 3 products you mentioned? It would take, a memory of Mandrake. Now, if you have a Wi-Fi connection, type www.osservaitalia.it. This is something which is run by Repubblica. It's an observatory. On a weekly basis, they produce trends, figures. On a monthly basis and on a quarterly basis, because we are among the activators of this system, we put together figures, information like what I heard that Italians eat breakfast more outside of home, which is not very true, really. And there you'll find transparent information. At the moment, everybody is speaking about economic recovery. Well, it's true, the retailing industry is going better, but, certain explanations that we've heard are not that true. Now, if you read the data about personal care, home care, you will see that the market's going down. Well, that's not very true, because those data do not include drugstores. We have all the data. Distributors have the data. It's more difficult to collect data about over-the-counter products, but distributors do have that product. Producers do have that product because you sell the products and you know very well where your products end. Consortia should have the products, otherwise what kind of consortia do you run? Why do you have a consortium if you don't know the data of your products? Well, strangely enough, the feeling I have is that it's not by chance that Grana Padano and Parmigiano Reggiano provide answers which are opposite one to the other, symmetrically opposite. So probably, one is doing something wrong. Well, let me tell you, last year what happened is because of milk prices, Grana Padano went better onto the market. If you're not told this by them, let me tell you this. I can tell you, but you should know this. Parmigiano Reggiano to answer Grana Padano cut prices aggressively, but this is what you did because whenever you have promotions and prices go down, then you blame the retailing industry. Let me tell you the truth. We have a product which is called store or outlet. Since inflation is no longer there, fixed costs of an outlet go up. Those who are trying to prevent producers from constantly running promotions, well, that's the retailing industry, because producers keep asking us to run promotions. I'll perhaps we'll stop here. Let me mention tuna fish to get out of this industry. Tuna fish 8 cans of tuna fish are sold through promotion out of 10. Pasta, 7 packs of pasta out of 10 are sold through promotions. So when you speak of price fluctuations, why, whenever we have an increase in raw materials, you increase prices, and then the big brands or the producer of big brands never change their prices in the price list? Never decrease price in the price list. Well, since they don't decrease prices in the price list, and then they complain and they say, well, the contracts of the retailing industry imply, high prices. But there are companies in the food industry that have contracts which envisage 80% of profits to them. Why? Because when raw materials go up, they increase their prices. When raw materials go down, they don't decrease their prices. And that's something that you'll see in Italy very often. So Italy is back at the Stone Age from this point of view. Or perhaps we are back at the Stone Age, but you will not be able to convince me today that your suppliers have a greater bargaining power and decide the commercial policy and prices. No, that's it. I get out of this room with my conviction that you have a greater bargaining power. Well, let me make you an example outside of your industry, and you'll understand who I will be referring in your own industry. I'd like to hear from Mr. Ambrosi, if I can as well, later on. Now, for any retailer in Italy, the top-ranking supplier accounts for 3% of revenues. Depending on the retailers, it might be Nestlé or Barilla. Okay? %3 on your business. Well, the relationship is unbalanced. You have more power than that company. True, you might say. No, wrong. Let me explain you why. Barilla and Nestlé, that account for 3% of revenues, do not sell meat, do not sell cheese, they do not sell, fruit, vegetables, and so on and so forth. As a matter of fact, the measure of power of a supplier is done within a product category. Barilla, that has 40% of market share in its category on the market, not in my stores, does Barilla have more power than us when you have that kind of supplier? Coca-Cola, which has an 85% of market share among colas on the market, who is more powerful? Am I more powerful, or is Coca-Cola more powerful? Granarolo, with its fresh milk, Parmalat, with its UHT milk. I mean, you need to look at the market share of that company in its industry. Each product, its brand, has to be measured exactly in the industry in which it operates. Otherwise, we're putting together apples, pears, tangerines, and those who sell pears will say, well, I'm not very important because you sell everything. Well, yes, but you're selling pears, and you are the most important pear producer on the market. So things perhaps change when it comes to products sold at the counter. When it comes to yogurt, for instance, does Danone have more power than the distributor, than the reseller? Of course it does. Danone accounts for 40% market share on the market. I mean, then when you speak with the antitrust regulator about dominant position, the antitrust regulator look at dominant position in that manner, not because that supplier accounts for 3% within the retailing industry or within the stores of one retailers.
Ambrosi. Ma allora io credo che il tema che un po' ha riunito, mi metto.
Well, regarding what I've just heard, I would like to highlight the following. As a matter of fact, between farmers, processors, and distributors, we have a concept of the value chain. This is what we would refer to. However, the blanket is a little bit too short for this value chain, and there are some competitive dynamics. So as long as we talk about different roles and cooperation, everything is fine. The role of companies, transformers or processors, is the most complex one, because we have to buy the raw material, we have to collect it, we load it on our lorries, it becomes our responsibility, we pay the market price, be it high, be it low. I do not want to talk about this right now, but for sure we pay much more than the rest of Europe. And then we take care of the processing with the different quality, safety issues, distribution issues, and all the complexities linked to marketing, commercial activities, until we finally get the product at the point of sale. In other words, we play a very complex and difficult role. At one given moment in time, we have to define a price, and that's where problems emerge. The blanket is a little bit too short. So markets have shown a drop in consumption in our industry. This is an evidence, and still in some segments of our industry we can see that consumptions are still decreasing. So the battle becomes increasingly more difficult. On top of that, there are competitive dynamics between the different brands. I mean, life is not easy, and when we try to figure out where the earning is along the supply chain, I mean, it is difficult. You can't generalize. There are moments when probably there are more advantages for one link of the chain, in other moments the situation is different. In the end, perhaps everything evens out, and after a complex analysis you can finally understand whether a company can survive on the market or not. Maybe they survive on the market because in a certain situation they had a competitive advantage, but this may not be forever. Everything depends on the story, on the life, on the dynamics. It is continuous evolution, continuous work in progress. Also, mass markets have continually been transforming in terms of different groupings and aggregations, different mix of brands. So with different peculiarities, different features, with mergers and acquisitions, the type of evaluation changes, the costs change. But formulating prices and trying to keep the margin. But this is what we have to do to maintain a margin. Without the margin, we cannot survive. It is true that without the distribution, as Mr. Pugliese was telling us, we would not exist. But it is just as true for distribution. They wouldn't survive without suppliers. So we need to find a modus vivendi so that everybody's got a margin, including farmers, because of course they must have a margin, because without the farmers we could not have our milk, and the farmers rely on agricultural production. They need agricultural production. So most of the production in our companies is linked to Italian milk, and the surplus we need should come from somewhere else. Otherwise, we do not have the possibility of processing the milk in our plants. So, that's right. I've nearly concluded. You asked me to take the floor. And I've nearly concluded. I mean, we need to find a balance, and I believe this is all what the companies represented in this room do. I'm sorry, but you have to be very, very, very quick because we are coming to the end of the meeting. Well, personally, I've always been surprised by the Italian logics. I mean, it looks as if we're isolated from the world. I mean, when we talk about margins and everything, it looks as if we're not part of the world, and it is curious that we never mention terms such as market and competitors. I mean, as we have seen this morning, the world around us can change prices by 50% in 1 year due to factors that we cannot control. So, given the fact that volatility is the real sign coming from the market, so that we can correct our production flows, that for small changes produce huge variations because the market is so stiff. So my question is, why don't we debate between processors and distribution? Why don't we debate about competition among different companies, competition between Italy and foreign countries? I mean, think about genetically modified produce. And what about contracts? I mean, we need to know about price changes immediately. And we need to transfer the changing price onto the final product. Otherwise, we have losses and inefficiencies, but this is never the object of Italian debates and conferences. Well, I would like to ask you all to fill in the form, and I shall leave the floor for conclusions to Mr. Angelo Rosso, who will draw some concise conclusions. I would like to thank all the speakers, the panelists, the participants in the forum, and thank you very much to all of you. Well, I believe that this forum, which hopefully will be repeated in 2016, is an important moment for growth in this industry. Francesco is a friend of CLAL's. Francesco is a friend of companies, of farmers, cooperatives, private companies. It doesn't make any difference. What is important is that he is a friend of the whole industry. This is my impression, because he had to be abroad today, but he gave it up. He said, Angelo, I changed my plans completely, but I wanted to be here today, and I would like to thank him with all my heart. So let's conclude our forum. Thank you very much to all of you, and thank you very much also from the interpreters.
Grazie, buon weekend e complimenti a CLAL.
Have a wonderful weekend and congratulations to CLAL.